So let's say you want to manipulate studio sends en masse, or you want to start with the main mix for one of your tracking performers and then tweak that main mix to their liking. Change what you want to change and keep what you want to keep. First thing I'm going to do before we go into that is first I'm going to reset all my Studio One sends back to 0 here. And then I'm going to turn them off. The other thing I'm going to do is, although these are all group channels and all my levels have been set on other channels, I'm going to, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to pretend I'm making a special mix here. And this is going to be my main mix. And I'm going to have piano down here. And we'll have musical effects down here. And sound effects down here. Let's just say, and I'll turn that up just a bit. And then I'm going to change some of the pan settings. So I'm going to have pans over here. This is panned over here. And so on. This is all just for demonstration, because when you see what happens, it'll be more clear. Okay. So let's just say I want to use the main mix as the starting point for a customized mix I'm going to make for the piano player in our Studio One. In order to do that, the first thing I need to do is go to the Cubase mixer and select the channels for which I want to manipulate the studio sends. It will not automatically manipulate all studio sends for all channels at once. You have to select which channels you want to manipulate. So in order to do that, you go to the Cubase mixer, you click on an inactive area of one of the channels, and it'll select it just like that. In order to select multiple channels, not in a row, you can hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC and select whatever channels you want at the same time. The other way to do it is to start with one channel here and then hold down the Shift key and go to the ending channel that you want, and it'll select all channels in between and including those channels that you selected. And that's what we're going to do for this demonstration. I've selected the channels that I want to turn on the Studio One sends for. And now once I've done that, I go to the Control Room mixer, and now I right-click on any inactive area of the Studio One section here. And I go to this Studio One area, and you'll see that it says here, from selected mixer channels. And this is why it's important. You need to select the mixer channels you want to manipulate. It doesn't happen automatically. And so any of these commands that you see under here are only effective for the selected mixer channels. And it's easy to forget that. So it's sort of an important sticking point. But now that I've got these selected mixer channels here, and I've right-clicked on my Studio One and I've selected Studio One, and now I can use current mix. Oh, well, first of all, I'm going to activate Studio Sends, enable Studio Sends. And once I've done that, it turns on the Studio Sends for those selected channels at whatever settings they were at before. And right now they're all set to 0 or in minus infinity dB. And then now I'm going to go back to Studio One, right-click on it, Studio One, and I'm going to use current mix levels. And again, this is only effective for the selected channels. Now it's changed my Studio Sends to match the fader settings in the mixer. So this is at negative 5.18 dB, and this Studio Sends at negative 5.18 dB. It also has changed all the Studio Sends to pre-fader. So this is basically a snapshot of wherever the transport is at the time, because it won't follow any automation that you've added to these faders. And there's ways to do that as well, and we'll cover that in another video. But right now, we're using the current mix levels at the current transport location for our Studio One sends. By setting them to use current mix levels in the Studio One aggregate sort of Studio Sends area, and then they're all set to pre-fader, and you can also right-click on Studio One, and then use current pan settings, and it'll change the pans according to the channels that you are activated here. So now we've got a current mix. So using the current mix as a baseline for Studio One. And let's pretend that our piano player does not want any sound effects in his earphones. So we'll turn that down. And let's pretend he doesn't want any musical sound effects in his earphones. And let's say he wants no vocal effects in his earphones, or maybe less. And maybe he wants an accentuated piano, and maybe a little less vocal, and maybe a little less drums, let's just say. Now we've got a customized mix made for the piano player in Studio One. And if I play that, you can hear the piano is accentuated. You hear a little bit more of that than anything else. But at the same time, me in the control room, again, I can listen to either what he's listening to in Studio One, or I can listen to the main mix and hear those musical sound effects that he doesn't hear. You hear that xylophone I hear in the main mix, but if I switch to what he's hearing, he doesn't hear that xylophone. And so in that way, you can have a very specific mix, and it can be very easily set up based on the original main mix that you have. And then you can just manipulate it from there. There's another way to do this that involves setting up the studio sends for post fader use. And I'm going to go over that in the next video.